Okay, so as well as the nervous system, we have another system for coordination within the body called the endocrine system. Now, the nervous system does all the fast responses, it does all the coordination of everyday things like movement, quick reactions, blinking, and reacting to keep us safe, etc. Helps to coordinate our bodies in everyday life. The endocrine system is more about slow changes in our body, and it's chemical based. So on these two pictures here, it shows the location of the main glands, and a gland is an organ that produces a chemical. I'm going to do some quick revision questions. So, could you have a go at these questions first of all? Hopefully you paused it, and then when you've done that, you can mark those. So, how do hormones actually work? Now, I need to find the right pen first of all. Sorry for the delay. Okay, so here we have some cells in a gland, in an endocrine gland. So for example, it might be the pituitary gland, we'll come on to that in a minute. And these glands here are making a chemical. That chemical is then released into the blood. It then travels around the blood, so it goes everywhere in your body, but it has a particular effect upon target cells. So if the gland was the testes, and they were producing the chemical testosterone, that would travel around a boy's body, and that would cause things like greater muscle growth, the voice to break, and hair to appear on different parts of the body. So those would be the target areas of the body. So by definition, and this is one worth having, a hormone is a chemical produced in a gland, carried around the body by the blood to its target cells where it has an effect. So, the main glands in the body. I'll change pens again. So, up here in the brain, right at the base of the brain, there is two glands that are important. There is the pituitary gland and there is the pineal gland. In your throat is your thyroid gland. Here, just on top of the kidneys, you've got adrenal glands on both sides, two of those. The pancreas is a gland because as well as being involved in digestion, where you've already met it before, the pancreas actually produces hormones for example, controlling the sugar level in the body. The adrenal gland produces adrenaline, and then the split here, the ovary produces some of the female hormones, and the testes, as we've just said on the previous slide, produces some of the male hormones like testosterone. So, could you pause now and could you draw that diagram in your books? And when you've done that, move on. Okay, so very briefly, endocrine system or nervous system, which one acts very quickly? Obviously the nervous system. And having a long-lasting response? The endocrine system. Which one's a chemical messenger? Endocrine system. Electrical impulses carry the message, so where's electricity used? That's the nervous system. Chemical messages to go across a synapse, we did that in the nervous system. Chemicals made and released by glands is the endocrine system. And coordinating a response by the body, both the nervous and endocrine offer responses. So, the pituitary gland itself. Now the pituitary gland, he says, trying to find his pen. Pituitary gland are located here, very close to the brain, and there's a thing here called the hypothalamus, which actually joins the brain and the nervous systems together, so that actually both coordination systems are actually joined and work together. It's known as the master gland, and one of the reasons for that is the pituitary gland often makes a hormone that travels to a target organ, another gland, and it causes that one to produce its hormones. So it's almost like the pituitary gland could be thought of as the gland that's in charge, and it's stimulating So bringing about, starting it to work, stimulating the other glands to do their jobs. That link between the nervous and endocrine system in here, in the brain, that is called the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is part of your brain, it's part of the nervous tissue, and it monitors your internal environment. So the hypothalamus is measuring things like, what's the temperature of the blood? What's the level of this and sugars in the blood? And then it can either do nervous responses through the brain, or it can cause the pituitary gland to start off some of its actions. Now, this looks quite complicated, and it is, and it's not, if that makes any sense. So, all you need to know realistically, when you're writing these onto that diagram you've drawn, the hypothalamus, you would just write down the fact that this is a link between the pituitary gland and the brain. Next to where you've written the pineal gland, you will need an example of a hormone it produces, and the hormone it produces is melatonin, and melatonin helps to control your sleep cycle. So could you pause and add that onto your diagram that you've drawn? The pituitary gland here, next one down. Again, lots of hormones produced there, but what are the ones you're expected to know? Well, growth hormone is one of the hormones. That's the one that actually coordinates us when we grow and do growth spurts and as we gradually grow. Obviously, I'm no longer growing, you are. This one, thyroid stimulating hormone, so it actually tells the thyroid gland to start working and producing hormones. And then there's a few hormones here. This one, follicle stimulating hormone, or better known as FSH. You'll meet again in the next lesson about the menstrual cycle, and that's only in women. And luteinizing hormone, again, two of the key hormones in the menstrual cycle, which we're coming to in another lesson. So those are the four you'd need to know that are produced by the pituitary gland. In the thyroid gland, the main hormone would be thyroxine, which helps to control our metabolic rate, how fast our body works and carries out its reactions. And when they say some people have a high metabolic rate, that's because their thyroid gland produces lots of thyroxine. Moving further down the body, again, the only bits from this you want are the adrenal glands down here, the ones that are just on top of our kidneys. They produce the hormone adrenaline, and that's a fight or flight response. So that's that burst of energy you get when you're scared, or when you're trapped, or when you're being attacked by a tiger, as has often happened to me. And obviously a burst of adrenaline, I can escape from the tiger. Sometimes I fight them, sometimes I just run. And then above that, the pancreas, as we've mentioned, it produces these two, and they're the two you need to know: insulin and glucagon. So as we're working through this, hopefully you're adding the hormones produced by the glands to those. And then from a female-male point of view, you need to know that the ovary produces estrogen, and you need to know that the testes produce testosterone, and testosterone is one of the androgens. So all the other words on there, just giving you an idea that there's lots and lots of hormones produced by the body. There's only certain ones we need to know at GCSE level. So back to the original thing, hormones are a chemical message. They're released by a gland, they're carried in the bloodstream, and they have an effect when they reach their target cells or organs. That's just a quick summary. Comparing, so you've got electrical in the nervous system, chemical in the endocrine, carried by nerves here for the message, carried by blood here. Nervous system, fast responses, slow acting. The action itself, over within a millisecond. The action here, long-lived. So things like growing, that's what I mean by long-lived. Growing can take years and years and years. Growth hormone controls that. So the main glands that you'd be expected to know, as we've said, and the main hormones. So can you make sure that those are included? If you haven't got all of that, just check your diagram. Have you got the name of the main glands? Have you then got the list of the main hormones they produce? Okay, so 5 questions. Could you please answer those before you move on to the next slide? And then there's your answers, so you can check, did you get it all? Did you know it all? Is it something you had to look back in your notes to actually remember? Okay, thank you.